So, hello. My name is Temi Lodo. Welcome to our live broadcast today, and we're talking about home safety security. And I've got with me Mr. Roland Stockton, all the way from Netherlands, and our second guest will be with us once the system permits. So we've got a lot lined up for you today. But before we go into it, let me just say to Mr. Roland, thank you so much. We've been doing this now for a couple of weeks now, and the viewers appreciate what we're doing. We're getting people, sending us message, even after the event, saying thank you so much. That was quite refreshing, quite enlightening, and we're going to start it again today. But before we start, let me give you the first 1 minute for you to give a summary of your view about general home safety issues, and then we can kickstart the conversation.
Yep. We went over a lot last week, Temi, and you'll recall we covered a lot of ground. But just to recap for those viewers who weren't with us, or just to refresh those who were, when we're looking at home security, the way I approach it is not just the physical security of the building, good doors, good locks, windows that are lockable, keeping things out of view that don't need to be seen by anybody, all those practical sides. But I like to take it a stage further and think about those issues that people sometimes forget. We're talking about security in the home. And as we mentioned last week, issues in the kitchen, for example, which is the biggest source of statistically of injury in the home environment, thinking not only about the elderly, but children and common accidents people can have. We touched upon the bathroom, a similar sort of situation as the kitchen, storage of detergents, for example, and so on and so forth. But I like to then take it beyond the obvious. And when we're looking at security in the home, let's not forget about the people who live in the home. And I want to touch on that a little bit later. The interaction between those who live in the home with their neighbors, perhaps, but certainly things that we need to consider that may be a security issue amongst people.
Excellent. And that's actually a good start from the part one. If you've not seen that, you could go straight to a YouTube page, or even on LinkedIn, where you're watching us live now. On LinkedIn, let us know where you're watching us from. Like this page, share this page, tell your friends that we are live on this program. And let me start with the first generic kind of question. Can we set traps in our homes and property?
Can we
set traps in our home and properties?
Oh, sorry, no, certainly not. Let me amplify on that, Temi, and for the viewers. Of course, it's all rather determined by the country you live in and what the law states about if people are trying to break into your home, how far you can go. I think in the US, you can shoot them dead. Okay, in Europe, it's not quite the same. But the thing is, coincidentally, there's Chris. Hi, Chris.
Yes.
Nice to
see
Chris.
You.
Nice to see you too.
Nice to see you. When it comes to setting traps, I was just saying, coincidentally, on the TV at the moment, I just left my grandkids, and they're watching that rather amusing movie, Home Alone. Where the young guy sets traps in the house to protect it. It's a movie. But if you're going to set booby traps in the home, what is this? This is premeditated, and it's there to deter or injure people, whatever way you want to look at it. And as it's premeditated, the consequences of this are, firstly, if you injure anybody,
Yeah.
you could be taken to court. And secondly, of course, imagine you set up a system in your house of booby traps, and then people come late in the night, or they're unaware of what you've done, and so on and so forth. So not only could you injure possibly intruders, but you could also injure yourself in setting the traps up, or all members of the household. So there was a case, you may recall, in the United Kingdom a few years ago now, but a farmer had shot somebody dead, actually, and he had a booby traps and things. And the man was taken to court because legally this was premeditated. So I can't speak with any authority about other countries, but within Europe, certainly, no, you can't set up booby traps, anything lethal or injurious, because you would be held responsible for the consequences.
Thank you so much for starting us up on that, because it's quite important that our people watching us understand that, you might want to set a little bit of poison there for rats, or, for animals, but always take into consideration the people in the house and things like that. Let me welcome Mr. Chris. All people are very, very busy, man. So I'm very grateful that you are able to come to, able to honor this invitation. And I know that yesterday you were quite busy, because you have over 4 or 5 million people watching you around the world, from one of our sister TV station, where you were talking about kidnapping, and I wanted to bring this in because safety and security also during this amber season, where people are going back home to be able to be with their loved ones, whether they're traveling from Kenya, from whichever part they're traveling from. We need to be able to know where they're traveling from and things like that. So what would be your advice to people in terms of safety and security that they're planning for their family, especially from an African perspective? Now, what would be the 3 important things that you say to people, as we approach December, as we try to keep our home safe? Please do this, do this, do this. What would be your advice?
Thank you very much, Semi. Thank you very much, Roland. I hope you guys are hearing me well, loud and clear, because I really want to communicate this so loud and so clear and so vividly so that everybody gets to understand. First of all, a lot of greetings from Kenya. It's cold here, not freezing cold as it probably would be in UK or Netherlands.
UK, Netherlands, yes.
Yeah, it's 17 degrees. That's cold for us.
Wow.
Now, like you well said, a lot of people are traveling for Christmas holidays. A lot of us will be traveling, and we need to discuss traveling security too, because a lot of things that goes along with that. And I know we shall prepare. But when you leave your home to go down to Christmas, you must first of all note one thing, and that a security risk assessment, or a risk assessment, a safety assessment would be a very good item for you to consider doing. And we know pretty well one thing that a lot of us make mistakes in is when we tell ourselves that we are conducting a risk assessment and we go out there, look for risks. It should not be done that way. When you go out in risk assessment, you go out looking for hazards, physical hazards, biological hazards, or chemical hazards. And then you develop from there, because risk assessment is a stepwise thing. Just like that, you start from rumors, you go to data, you go to information, you go to intelligence, and you deploy action. Much the same way we do with risks. You start with hazard. What is this that can harm people, and who can be harmed here? And once you establish that, then you look at if those hazards were to crystallize and become something tangible, then we're talking about a risk. If that risk were to left crystallize, it becomes an injury or an accident. And that chain continues to grow like that. So when we're leaving our homes to go for Christmas, we need to think of a lot of things, right? In the event that we leave our houses without any occupancy, what must we do to deter that attraction that our homes could pose to either bad actors or opportunistic persons? One of the best things to do is to look at your home from a country perspective. If you go to any country, one thing that you will find is what we call a boundary or a border. So ensure that your home has a border, a very clear, well-defined border. And border construction could take different forms. our perimeter could take different forms. You could go for live, which would take a lot of years for you to plant. All right. You can combine that with either what do we call this, chain link, razor wire. I mean, we're looking at you're looking at a budget amount. You must first of all look at your budget. What do I have to spend on my security? So once I'm able to determine the capability in my capability in terms of finances, then I choose the right fence, and that must also be determined by the neighborhood that I live in. If you're living next to a slum, then standard items like, for example, above 8 feet, the length of your fence must be very good.
Yeah.
From the fence coming out to the house, let's look at the house. Of course, there must be that line of thought between safety and security. In terms of security, grilling is quite important. The types of windows, the window panes that you have are quite critical. You want to have this kind of window panes where you can see somebody on the outside, and then somebody on the outside cannot see you. Small considerations. As you move in from there, you have to consider, when I'm leaving my house, I'll have to lock it. What is the best defense for my house? Would be, for example, deploy vibration sensors. How do you locate those vibration sensors? On your windows or on those points, the pinch points? I mean, the points that any intruder or a bad actor would use to come into your home and then go and do what they have to do. If that line is beaten, what will be my next recoil? My next recoil will be motion sensors. And these motion sensors, I have to employ Industry 4.0 technologies, for example, AI, right, to make sure that when any motion happens in my home, when I am awake, I can be notified via SMS. My camera can go active and instigate recording. Then my cameras have a capability of motion sensing, and as soon as they sense that triggers my intruder alarm system, right? And that's intruder alarm system. For example, I have a pre-recorded sound that says, "You are being watched and you're in an authorized place. You're not authorized to be here." That alone is deterrence. I mean, it sends a very good message. So we are saying here, TRAZ has a lot of solutions that everybody can consider that are pocket friendly, even money back in forms of investment. You can get money back from investment, but you end up protecting your house. Imagine that I'm a UK. I have my house in UK and I've come holiday in Africa, here in Kenya. And then it tells me somebody is in my house. I can access my cameras that are sound enabled and speak to that intruder, telling them you are being watched. And the police are coming after you. I mean, deterrence level is pretty high. Yeah. If I can afford, then my home can also be patrolled using drones. Even outside of that, I can use solar-powered LED lighting connected with motion sensors that increases in terms of lighting. The hue or the lux goes as you approach it. And that should be set in a way that can trigger so many chain reactions that go into deterring. So thank you. There are a lot of solutions out there that you can exploit and design from TRAZ to give you a solution that makes you travel safe and have a very safe holiday and not think about they have broken into my house. They have broken into my house. No. And we can link all that to a police station or to an alarm response team.
Thank you so much. We have a viewer from Dubai on one of the pages. We have somebody all the way in Europe here watching. So it's more like we've got the whole continent covered. And in light of what you just said, which brilliantly put, let me go to Mr. Roland and actually ask, how can home owners protect themselves against natural disaster, flood, fire, and earthquake? Because Mr. Chris has talked about the kind of deterrence you could put in place, for a human engagement. But what about if nature calls in? Well, if you left your home and it's flood that comes in, but not just flood alone, but it's fire from your neighbor, or if not, that is earthquake from the earth. What do you do in 2 minutes? Oh, 1 minute. I need to unmute you, Joe.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yes, yeah, excellent.
I always like to listen to Chris because he has a wealth of experience that we can tap into and a Definitely. Lot of very clever insights. Looking at natural disasters, of course, unless you're a pop star, Temi, Chris. Well, we know Chris is a film star because he was on TV this morning. He's not mentioned it, and I'm sure he'll send us the link so we can nominate him for an Oscar. When it comes to natural disasters, very few of us have the capability of being able to say, I'm going to live in this particular area, buy a plot of land, and so on and so forth. Again, natural disasters, what might a natural disaster be? Well, of course, it could be a flood. And you will remember the three of us, actually, when we were near Mombasa, visiting the university to lecture. You remember Chris and Temi, we were watching things floating down the road. We were wondering what was going to happen next. So the first thing is, of course, make sure that if you can, you're not living on a floodplain or close to a river where there is a seasonal risk of the river bursting its banks and so on and so forth. If you are designing your own home, if you're lucky to be able to do so, the theory is now that the bottom ground floor would not be an area that is inhabited or has anything there. Basically, it's the garage and maybe a storeroom for things that aren't affected by water. And what we call the first floor, I know for Americans it's slightly different, the next floor up, this would be your living room and so on and so forth. A little bit like the houses you see in Asia where they're on stilts. So the theory is we have everything above the potential flood level where we can. And if we can't, if we have adequate warning, and you may have seen the terrible events in Valencia recently where one man was saying he got the SMS warning that there was going to be a flood when the water was up to his chest. This is, and tragically, you'll recall people died. So sometimes we have to be self-reliant, I would say, be self-reliant when it comes to any sort of natural disaster. Earthquakes, not really a lot you can do about an earthquake, the sheer ferocity of an earthquake, but just knowing that if an earthquake comes, there are certain areas in most buildings that are more sturdy than others. Under the stairs, for example, is a place to go. Under a very sturdy table, anything that puts you between what might fall down on you. Other natural disasters, of course, there may be seasonal insect problem, mosquitoes and so on, dengue fever, all these sorts of things. Seasonal changes, think about them in advance, but really it's being proactive and situationally aware, as Chris has already mentioned, when you do your risk assessment coupled with a threat analysis, situational awareness, but just plan ahead and hope that things aren't going to go topsy-turvy. And of course,
thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I'm waiting for my flight ticket to the Oscars for Mr. Chris, of course. Talking of that, Mr. Chris, you are well known for your love for technology, and it's no secret that that's an area that you've been working on, cybersecurity and those kind of things. If there are any two advice you give to anybody about the use of technology to secure a home, what would the one or two that you would recommend? I know you mentioned lightnings already. What else will you recommend to people in terms of the use of technology to secure homes?
Thank you very much. Like I said, we need, number one, to really do a risk assessment of our homes. And one of the risk assessment of our homes is to identify who is in the house. If, for example, I have old people in my house, then I need to have very close monitoring of those old persons, right? So my choice turns out to me choosing convenient, for example, telehealth and virtual consultations. I mean, ability to access telehealth and virtual consultation, which makes it quite convenient and easy to access those old people in my home. They suffer from old age diseases. and constantly we want to monitor them. So I could have mobile telehealth and virtual consultations. Have cameras that, of course, are watching them from home. Very IA powered cameras with very good lighting, and be able to see some things like that, right? So I must have that capability to remotely monitor my home. If it is children that I have in the house and I'm out at work, we know here in Africa, there have been quite a number of households who have not been doing very well in terms of safety of children and safety of the families. Homes. So I must have that ability to remotely monitor my house and see what is happening, so that I take the corrective action that is required to ensure that my home remains safe all the time, right? If I can have that, even wearable devices, for example, smartwatches, remote sensors, and health tracking applications, while I'm in my house, or while I have somebody in my house, old person or young person, that works very well for me as the homeowner, right? On that medical front, right? Then medication management for those particular kind of persons. I can have automated dispensers in the house to automatically dispense drugs for my old person, remind them more time to take their medication, right? And have electronic health records that works very well. On the part of security, I would go for a smart home. Go choose smart technology that I can deploy in my home to help me sustain, right? For example, voice activated assistants. I can be able to speak remotely in my house, and my household thinks Chris is right here, or these guys are always right here. So that makes it very easy for me to continually keep my house safe. And I've basically, what you're saying, home continuity plan. Make sure nothing interferes with my home. My home remains intact. I have a visual of my home. Even when I travel, travel safe. Now, in terms of utility payments, we know sometimes people leave lights on, just on like that. That goes back into my pocket as a person paying in this place. So it'd be important for me to look at, for example, things like smart lighting and thermostats in the house, so that I can be able to say, we know also very well that these lights or source of power, well, they're not managed well. They would end up in a fire. And fire gathering my entire home, that means a lot of problems for me, right? And my security systems must be very well linked and integrated with fire and safety systems to ensure that one incident or one event in my house triggers another, and that from my remote monitoring enables me to make a decision so fast and so decisively to make sure that nothing develops in my home and becomes catastrophic. That would make me lose my property, would make me lose life of people out there. So there are a lot of solutions out there. Digital communication tools, we have that. A lot of that is in the market. Let's explore them, right? We can do video calls. We can use social media to communicate like we are doing right now. But when I travel myself, I talk to my children on virtual conferencing, just know how they're doing and how they're home. I go to as far asking, how is my dog doing? Imagine I can get to know how my dog is doing from an electronic perspective. Beautiful. So there are a lot of solutions out there. Lots of solutions out there. We can also join online communities, guys who discuss security of their home and safety of their home and performance of their home. And that makes it very good. So there are lots of solutions that TRAZ can recommend to those watching us, those who are seeking our intervention in terms of consultancy, for us to make their homes much safer and for us to give solutions that really make them very interactive with their homes, no matter how far they are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chris. And you hit on something that I wanted to bring in Mr. Roland on, because people will listen to you and say, wow, so those are things I could do, and they could just quickly rush out there to go and start buying all those things. But it doesn't work like that. You need to actually have a proper security plan and put it in place, just like you rightly mentioned, and Mr. Roland mentioned. And that's the reason why I want to ask Mr. Roland this important question. What are some common mistakes people make when it comes to home security?
Okay. I think the first one, Temi and Chris, I'm sure you'll agree with me here, mindset. The mindset is I would say, one of the most critical things, and famous last words, it will never happen to me. Okay, we've all heard this before. So mindset is the first thing to say. It can happen to you. It might happen to you, not it won't. So I identify, Chris has already alluded to there, think about the risk, do a risk analysis and so on and so forth. The next thing I would say, and I'm sure you'll both agree, is that no security system is infallible. Security system may fail for different reasons. internet may go down, electricity may be cut off. Even if you have backup batteries, we have I used to have a saying in the military, Murphy's Law, that at the most inopportune moment, if it can go bad, it will. So at a critical moment, you're just getting burglarized and your cameras go out, for example.
True.
And again, Chris mentioned about having the solar panels. So have your security system with a backup. If it's run on mains, then when we used to do in the military, what if? So it's run on mains electricity. What if the main electricity is cut? Have a battery backup or whatever. So no security system is infallible, and normally the weakest link in any security system is people. I would say people are one of the weakest links in any system. I know you may laugh at this, and I think I mentioned it last week, but every morning, and Chris will relate to this. Every morning when I get up, I do my dawn patrol. Not quite at dawn. I walk around my entire house just to check there's no leaks. There's nothing has happened that shouldn't have. And every evening before I go to bed, my wife knows I will. I go and check the front door. I check the windows. I check the plugs. So have a security regime and stick to it. And if you are going to be away from home, make sure that somebody knows what they should do. I think another thing would be, if you can, and it depends on your neighborhood, again, looking at things on the AI side of life, is have a neighborhood app. We have one in the building where I live, the 6 neighbors. We all have each other's mobile phone. We're all connected, and we can all put anything on the app straight away. And it's a great relief because, sometimes we're away by the nature of our job, but it's a relief to know that if our families are back home and they think they may have heard something, they can quickly send a message out to all the neighbors instantaneously. And just the fact the neighbors put their lights on or walk in the garden or come out would be reassuring to people. So a neighborhood app's a good idea. Not keeping up to date on incidents. So if, again, we have a bigger one than the apartment block where I live, we actually have the neighborhood as an entity, the big neighborhood, where the police will post on their incidents that are occurring. So keep up to date on there's a spate of burglaries in the area, or kids are fooling around and things like that. Make sure your system is maintained fully. And this goes again for electricity circuits, plumbing, everything in the house from a security point of view. If it needs maintaining, maintain it. Teach your children. I don't want to sound misogynistic now, but teach your wife what to do in certain cases, things that we might normally do. Teach your children what to do in certain cases, what not to do, and then make sure that everybody's all singing from the same song sheet. And occasionally practice what to do in the event of. I think would be some areas that people may overlook. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I love that, that neighborhood-ish kind of approach to things. And, from Nigeria to Kenya to Namibia, we have that community neighborhood approach, which is not yet dead, at least not in every part, because you enter into a community, they will know you enter into that community in Africa because they talk to each other. There's that thing. That's one thing we've lost in Europe. So, Mr. Chris, give us the African view on security and the use of your neighbor. But more importantly, because I know you're into risk management, that's your area of expertise. Let's talk about insurance, because Africans don't like insurance. they don't like to do things like life insurance because they believe doing that affects their religious beliefs. Saying that they should do life. If you go and talk to somebody about having a life insurance, say, you want to kill me now? I'm not dying. The Lord shall not live, but they start giving you quotations from the Bible, which is good, and we must not dismiss faith. But I want you to talk about insurance from a security perspective and what your advice to be to anybody watching us, because if it's just one person that we could help with a better understanding about insurance, then we've done a good job.
Thank you very much. I really love you bringing out the subject of insurance. All right. When you talk about insurance, like you said, most of us in the continent of Africa don't think of insurance as a fallback plan. But sometimes we end up finding ourselves taking home insurance if we take mortgages, because mortgaging package, right? Yes. That amortization itself has a lot of insurance requirement in there. And that goes quite a lot in helping us. So one of the key issues of insurance is, for example, fire. Fire can happen in our home at any given time. Take your children. We've not taken steps, for example, when our children are growing up and they're in the explorer stage, where they're touching everything, they're climbing everything, they're playing, they want to know about everything. That becomes an easy source of a fire. And if your home is not insured, it's going to be gutted and you lose your life investment just like that. Some of us don't even keep, for example, a firefighting equipment at home, fire blanket in the kitchen, next to our MCB. We don't keep dry powder fighting, things like that. So basically, it is important for us to take insurance for our homes because anything can happen. And the name insurer refers to a fallback plan. So it is important from a security perspective to take up an insurance plan or insurance package that is affordable to you, that can guarantee that your house is protected, and in the event of anything happening, you get a fallback plan. There are so many packages in insurance, packaged in different ways. Yeah, there are anti-civil unrest insurance policies, there are anti-terrorism policies, and we know what those kind of incidences can do to our homes. We know what fire can do to our home. We know something can happen in the neighborhood, just like my brother Roland has said. Something can happen in the neighborhood. And for example, natural disaster can also come and your house is stricken down by lightning or is washed away by flash flood, the heavy rains that happen here and there. In the event that happens, if you don't have an insurance cover for your home, it basically means your home is gone with the floods. The only thing that remains for you is a plot for you to develop. If you don't have funds to develop that plot, you have lost your home. So it is important, really important, to consider insurance packages. Some of them are so good. You take, for example, an insurance package of 10 million Kenyan shillings. That's around some several dollars here and there, right? Every financial year, there's some money they give back to you, or they could give you a lump sum in the end of it. That comes back to you. And when that kind of money, you should invest it in upgrading your home systems. Most of us here in Africa use charcoal or firewood. We don't know for the fact that the smoke emitted by firewood or charcoal is carbon monoxide. And that can result to a death in the home, because some of the homes were constructed without proper aeration. So the concentration of carbon monoxide and these hazardous gases, for example, sulfur and things like that, all right, they gradually accumulate in our body, and you end up in the long run developing occupational diseases like silicosis or things like that. I mean, from inhalation of hazardous substances, right? So when you take up an insurance cover, you'll have the benefit that an insurance company will send an assessor to assess the safety status of your home and security posture of your home, and from there you can derive piece of advice from here and there. Do this, do that, do this, do that. When you do all that holistically, and you want to take holiday like we're going to the festive season, you can be restful that nothing will happen. The event that it happens, you have the right to go and claim from insurance, and that comes with other several packages that can benefit you. So I am a very strong proponent that let us insure our properties against natural disasters, against calamities, or against hazardous things or disasters that could end up taking us to square A. You end up not even having a home. Even the plot that you develop your home itself cannot be developed further because the destruction there is unspeakable. So it is important for us to consider that.
Thank you so much. And you've really hit it on the nail when it comes to this insurance issue. And I'm quite pleased that you touched on that. Let me talk about energy and utility. Actually, let me join two questions to one. Let's talk about child and pets safety. Mr. Roland, a lot of people have lost their children to bites and death from animals attacking children in the home. What specific measures should parents or families with children do with pets? And yeah, let me take it from there. Then I'll ask Mr. Chris, since that will be from a European perspective. Mr. Chris will look at it from an African perspective.
Okay. Chris was getting me quite excited there because he started to talk about chemicals, and knowing my background, you see he's smiling now when he was on about chemicals. With a lot of people don't realize that burning wood, it does give off a lot of what they call carcinogenic particles in the air, which are cancer producing chemicals. So we should be mindful of that. And in my home, I have next to my gas boiler a carbon monoxide monitor, like the smoke detectors, but this one is specifically for carbon monoxide. So if you are subject to that sort of potential threat, everybody, not only smoke detectors, but in a good place, a carbon monoxide detector is good. But anyway, to get back to, I'll leave chemicals alone because it's what my baby. I like chemicals. Children and pets. Well, let's consider children first. Children, of course, depending on their age, and my wife, she's a teacher at a play school, and at different stages in their development, children can be, should we say, challenging. And what do children like to do? Well, they like to emulate, they like to copy what mum and dad does. And we should be mindful of this. Children will see their mum, in the kitchen, cooking, baking, doing whatever. They will want to do the same. And Chris already mentioned about the kitchen, and we touched on that last week. But children, I want to take this in a slightly different way. I'll just go off on a tangent, folks, if you bear with me. Children will copy their parents. So as a parent, we should be mindful of what we display in front of children. So if, for example, there's not a married couple on this planet, I would suggest, who doesn't argue or doesn't have disagreements and so on. But from, I think they call it in nature mirroring. Children will see this, and if they see mum and dad arguing and so on and so forth, the behavior that they show in front of the children may accept. Firstly, parents should be mindful of how they react in front of their children. The other thing I would say is keep a very, very careful eye on your children. Chrissy's going to talk about it from an African perspective. I was amazed, totally amazed. I saw a lady pushing a trolley with a baby in it, a pram, and the child must have been 2 or 3 years old on a mobile phone, obviously just pressing the buttons and so on and so forth. But at some point, we need to think about access to electronic devices and what the children can see on those devices. So we need to think about social media and how children can be subjected to unsavory things or bullying, for example. But I would always say children will copy what they see around them. So be mindful of that. The other thing is when we're looking at pets, and I'm hoping here we're just talking about, I consider normal pets, cats, dogs, budgerigars, fish in a tank or something. Fish in a tank, not a problem. Birds, not really a problem. But cats and dogs are feral. Basically, they're domesticated, but they're not that far away from being wild. And if you have a guard dog, for example, where it's trained to be an attack dog or whatever, you should always teach your child from as soon as they know, don't go and pull the dog's tail. Don't go playing with the cat, because the cat will retaliate, and the dog will take up to a certain point any sort of abuse, but then the dog may retaliate. And we have seen cases, I can't speak for Africa, but in Europe, there has been cases not only of children being killed by the pets, but adults being killed by the pets. So if you have, I know Chris mentioned he has a dog, okay, and I know Chris's children, I saw them once, we said hello, and they're a little bit older, so they will know. But from an early age, teach the children, do not torment the pet. And remember, pets will get jealous, okay? The other thing is, there's been some tragic cases where, for the life of me, I can't understand why anybody would want a pet snake. Really? A pet snake, you know, why not just have a stick of dynamite and a match beside it? There was a tragic case in Canada, everybody, and two little boys were squeezed to death, and I think one was eaten. Little tiny boys, they were in their apartment, and one of the neighbors had a pet python. The thing had escaped. So be mindful of not only your pets, but other people's pets. Again, for the life of me, why anybody would want a pet snake, I have no idea. But animals, think animal. If you see a dog, think hyena. If you see a cat, think lion. And teach your children to be careful around the pets, and you be careful around your children, what you portray.
Thank you so much. And let's look at it. There's been a lot of stories in the UK. I know you will have seen it on TV, Mr. Chris, where pets just kill the children, or even their owners. And they don't just bite them on the leg like they do in Africa that we're used to. They go for the neck. They go for very, very dangerous place. So we don't know whether it's something new that is happening now in the last 10 years. Is it the way these animals are being trained or the way they are being handled? You know, I'm looking at buying a pet for my house in Africa. And I've already made up my mind. I'm buying the tiny ones, those ones that I can step on and I can kill with my bare foot, not the ones that will grow and hold my neck and I can't do anything about it. So what would be your view on that, Mr. Chris, in terms of advice?
Thank you so much.
On animals, yes.
Thank you so much. Sorry, apologies for that intervention.
Yeah.
Sorry. I like what Roland has said, and I really like how you brought it up from the dangers caused by these animals to children in the house and people in the house. One thing we must remember, as homeowners, as parents, we must work very hard to ensure that we create a safe environment at home for our children. Part of this creating a safe home could include child-proofing measures for the home. All right, we think of keeping alcohol in the house could have adverse effects on the children. All right, if we don't know how to store cleaning products, they could have an adverse effect on the children. If we don't know how to handle medications and things like that. So when it comes to animals, we must equally look at them from that perspective. I am a proponent and a big advocate of pets, but I only go for domesticated pets. So any pet that I bring home to my children, they must be trained. Or when I bring them when they are young, I make sure that there are very great friendship or relationship between my children and these pets. And how do you create a relationship with a pet? Is to give it food, right? As long as it's not on an empty stomach, a pet is a friend of yours. Even dogs, man's best friend. When it's hungry, sometimes it can bite you. But when you keep it just like yourself. Know that it requires a meal, it requires water, it requires medication. All these things, it becomes very good. Now, one of the things that makes these dogs or animals that we keep in our houses harmful to our children, even to ourselves, is how we treat them. I see my daughter and how she behaves with her cat. They're almost very good friends. And even her dogs. When the bus stops at the gate, they all run towards the gate because they're so used to her. Now they're used to her, she's going to give them something to eat, something else, create a relationship. She takes them to a bath, washes them, handles them very nicely. When they're handled nicely, they can be very good. But for example, you don't medicate a dog. Right? It develops rabies. It bites your child. There you go. And then another big item for yourself, right? Now, what Mr. Roland has mentioned, in African context, keeping a snake is almost witchcraft. So I would not advocate for those kind of things. A sight of a snake myself freaks me out completely. I would not want to expose my children to those kind of things. Then they start saying, "Is that a witch or something like that?" I would not want. Bring in friendly domesticated animals. There we have dogs, we have cats. The most common ones, right? And as you choose a pet for your home, please remember, even if you say that dog is man's best friend, there are some dog species that can turn wild to a man. It's good to know what species they are and be able to avoid bringing those kind of dogs to the home, because you want to child-proof your home and you want to create a safe environment at home. I don't want any forms of accident, all right? If you have young babies, you must have baby protection plans in your home. And one of these plans is a friendly dog. And you have seen how some dogs behave so friendly to children, all right? So how we treat them, how we handle them, how we onboard them, and how we internalize their presence in our house as our own, as part and parcel of the family, makes them good. But the choice, to me, is the ultimate. No snakes, no leopards, no lions, because they can turn wild. They're always wild. No, nothing like that for me, all right? In African context, nothing like that. Not easy, man.
I can see a lot of people are loving it, especially when we talked about dogs. Europe, the dogs and cats is one of their best friends, and people are started liking it. So we are on the last 10 minutes. So what I want to do is I want to give Mr. Roland the first 2 minutes. Talk about generally your advice to anybody watching us on anything to do with home. Any subject matter you want to pick on, any particular area you want to pick on, and I'll do the same for Mr. Chris. So just tell us whatever particular area that you are quite concerned about. Or let me even put it this way. We know the emergence of AI, cybersecurity, Internet of Things. Where do you see how do you see our home safety, the level at which our home safety will move to in the next 10 years? Because we're talking about jobs now. You could have a gardener, and in 20, 30 years' time, you might not have a gardener anymore because there'll be robots that could plunge or even clean your house. There are Internet of Things now. There are things that actually could pick your dirty clothes and put them in the washing machine and wash them and dry them for you. So where do you see home safety and security in the next 10, 20 years? And what will be your area of concern about home safety? Talk about those two things. And then I'll give Mr. Chris the last thing to speak. Yeah.
I know Chris is the guru on the cybersecurity and so on. That's his one of his areas of expertise. So I'll steer away from that part, Chris, and I'll leave that part for yourself. I know, like me with chemicals, Chris is with cybersecurity. Okay, so I do have some concerns, Temi, when it comes to the Internet of Things. And people don't realize that when you have connected, Chris mentioned before about the smart home, when you have connected devices in your home, and they will become more and more and more and more interconnected devices, the Internet of Things, as they call it, they are able to be hacked into. So if you have any device in a smart home, you must make sure that it is password protected. And there has been some sad cases. We live with some people who really are the most despicable, where they have hacked into baby cameras, watching kids in a cots and so on and so forth. And they've hacked into the baby cameras so they can watch the children at home, for example. So this Internet of Things and not being security aware of the implications of that and how you can be exploited either with people hacking into your system, as I've just mentioned, or identity theft, for example, areas like this where there's more and more being done automatically by different devices. People need to be aware of how those devices can be exploited by a criminal fraternity. I leave it there. I'll, if Chris wishes, and I smile on his face. It's his baby now. Okay, I let Chris continue in greater detail.
Okay.
Chris.
Well, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Ronald. Thanks a lot, Timmy. We know that majority of us nowadays work from home. COVID changed the dynamics of everything. And many of us work at home. Wi-Fi, internet connectivity at home has become almost a basic need. Basically saying that everybody is connected to every internet portal. I mean, we connected to the world from our home. Now, one most interesting thing is how we choose our passwords and how we store some of our critical information. For example, you find that my bank, the PIN for my ATM card is stored on my phone, which accesses an unoperated internet from my house. And I don't know the basics of cybersecurity, right? And you find my son or my daughter or my house that knows the password to my wife and goes give everybody who's around there, all right? You can just find somebody, a bad actor, chooses or picks on you, is able to access that, go into your Internet of Things, and be able to pick up these critical items from you, your passwords and everything like that. Next time you're finding a lot of information about you, you're finding your bank has been wiped out, you're finding your social information out there in the open, and you're wondering where this come from, right? Our children, when they access the net from home, it's very easy for them to be cyberbullied. It's important as to make sure that our homes, our children, go to safeness, depending on their age. As a parent, I must have parental guidance on the devices that my children are using at a certain age. All my children who are below 18, right? The two children that I have, one is 19, one is 8. Right? The one that is 8 has parental guidance on all the gadgets in the home that can access the net. Time and again, as a parent, I go into the bookmarks that they put on their search engines. I go in their search history and get to see exactly what have these guys been going through. All right. Sometimes you find the children very moody. They're on their phone, but they're very moody. What is happening? They're being cyber harassed in that particular space. And as a parent, you must protect them. And we know nowadays shopping, you see a lot of nudity, and from everything that comes there. Right? Our children must be protected from that. If we don't do that, something happens. Now, the worst part of it comes when you have all your systems in the house, safety and security systems interconnected or integrated and running from one platform, and then you lose your ability to protect yourself. So it's important time and again, we have an ICT specialist to come and look at our posture, a cybersecurity specialist, come and look at our cyber posture. Are we good? Are we lame duck? Or are we totally been thrown into the mud because of what we have done? Some of these things we do without knowing, right? So cybersecurity is a critical item that we must continually look at in our homes because of the freeness and the accessibility and the operability that we use our internet, our home internet for, and that allows everybody or anybody who can easily get that password to use our system to do a lot of other things. And that some of them can go into very sensitive websites that could even have the National Intelligence Service come to your home. What are you doing in this site or something like that? Some of our children are so smart they can use our home internets to break into the banks and transfer money here and there or do some other funny things. And next time you have security agents right in your home. So it is important that we take this as a front because the future is tech. I know Donald Trump protest is taking office, and one of his key areas is technology. So the world is going to move so tech, so very tech. So we must posture ourselves. We must put ourselves in that position that we are able to adjust to the demands of technology that are coming in the future and be able to similarly practice cybersecurity and cyber defenses to ensure that we do not become the weak point that could be used for DDoS attacks or phishing attacks or some things like that, that could jeopardize the whole Internet of Things that we are connected to include even our national grid that provides internet for the whole country. So cybersecurity at home is an area that some of us have taken or underestimated as a risk because we just think that it's unlikely to happen. Completely underestimating it is unlikely to happen. And in that unlikeliness, Yeah, it begins with one step that translates into another step, and the next time you know, your internet has been blocked because of the exposure your net is bringing to the national grid or to the neighborhood, right? There's a lot to talk about that we can talk of, but because of time, Temi, back to you, Mr. CEO, and thank you for the opportunity to allow me to share my views and my profession with our listeners. Thank you very much, Roland, too.
Thank you so much. You know me. I can't let both of you go without touching on something very important. Today we posted the trans global geopolitical analysis, which you are providing for us, and we're doing it every Saturday. So for our viewers out there, if you want to know from an expert perspective what happened, throughout the week, then Mr. Chris is actually doing that on a weekly basis, and we're posting it every Saturday. There are so many articles out there, but I cannot just let you go without asking, when I have both of you here, without asking about what is actually on the hot on the template from a security perspective. Now, America gave Ukraine permission to use their weaponry. UK gave them permission to use their weaponry, and they've done that. Russia has decided to redefine their approach on nuclear usage, and have used a weapon which they say cannot even be stopped by any counter, whatever you want to use it, counter attack, whatever, and they hit Ukraine. But they've not only hit Ukraine, they said that they could also hit those countries that have given them permission. I was speaking to a family yesterday, and he says, you know what, once I noticed that this thing is going upside down, I'm taking my children back to Africa. That these are people that are to Europe. He said, because I don't want them to be subscribed into weapon. I know I'm too old for anybody to give me a weapon. So, Mr. Chris, and both of you, you guys have signed that contract, so they could call you. They could call you in to fight a war. But on a serious note, the UK government had a discussion with the Director General of NATO, because if it hits UK, then it hits one of the NATO countries, so there's going to be a problem there. So I wanted to ask, taking into consideration that some of the European countries have also said they are willing to hand over Netanyahu to the International Criminal Court. So, Mr. Chris, let me start with you, and then I'll finish with Mr. Roland. In 2 minutes, then Mr. Roland could have the last 2 minutes. What is your view on the Russia issue and your issue on the International Court saying that they've asked for the arrest of the Prime Minister of Israel?
That is like you mentioned. That's a hot issue of the international arena right now, and a lot of every country has come out to express what they view that to be. Israel itself, as far as mentioned that as ridiculous, because they have a right to defend themselves. Other countries have welcomed the idea. They said, yes, it's high time now Palestinians get their right. Other countries have said, yes, if Bibi shows up in our country, we'll arrest him. Now, let's look at how the UN Security Council is going to veto that. It is going to be a big item, because if you look at the appointed officials of DJT's government to be, majority of them are pro-Israel. Yeah. Majority of them are anti-Russia. Majority of them are anti-China developing in terms of economic power. Yes. So what are we saying here? Every country can say what it says, but when you go to the UN veto power, that's where the determination is going to be made. And America has, of course, said through its appointed officers that they are not going to support, they are not going to give any support to ICC for it to execute on its mandate. So in the international platform right now, things are totally different. Things are totally in a confusion. Biden administration is going out flat to ensure that they are, like if you would say, an analyst like myself, or you would say, they are doing everything to ensure that when Donald Trump comes to the office, he has a lot of difficult time in terms of switching policies. They have authorized what you say, and they have gone ahead to give a very huge budget to support Ukraine war. But you look at Donald, he and his team are saying, no, we have to negotiate, all right? Bibi also we have seen some positive rhetoric from the US to Iran, and Iran positive rhetoric to the US, right? And that promotes a lot of animosity with also the growing anti-Semitism in the globe. Yeah. So it is difficult as at now to predict exactly where we are going. But where I am seated, I would say each and every country is looking at a point where when DJT takes office, they have an upper hand in terms of negotiations. They have an upper hand in terms of wanting something to leverage on their position for them to change. So it can only be crystallized and be known clearly where we shall be and where we shall go soon as DJT takes office.
Thank you so much. Mr. Roland, what's your view?
Yeah. I concur with what Chris is saying, and I do like Chris's insights when he posts them online. They're interesting reading. When it comes to Israel, I think the ICC has been infiltrated. I will use that word, infiltrated by those with their own agendas. And I would say that for, let me put this from an African point of view, for some Africans, South Africa was one of the first countries. Surprisingly, they had a good deal with Iran just before they did so, that went to put this case against Israel for genocide and so on and so forth. If Israel wanted to commit genocide on October the 8th, it would have been finished. But I think the ICC is politically motivated. What they're saying is a nonsense. And really, if the ICC were in any way credible, there are so many evil people around the world doing evil things that maybe they should look at the world globally rather than focusing on this cause celebrity, which is the I feel sorry for the Palestinians, those who are innocent. Of course, I do, like every other decent human being. But after October the 7th, I think you really lost any sort of moral high ground and the lies you tell. So the ICC really has lost all credibility. I'll even go a stage further and say the UN is a joke. Plain and simple, I don't hold back. To my mind, the UN needs to be disbanded and something put in its place. We used to have the League of Nations. It failed. The UN has failed. It needs to be changed. And an example from an African perspective, how can the continent of Africa not have a seat on the Security Council? The African Union, I know Nigeria is going for this, South Africa, but really I think to represent all the African people, the African Union should have a seat as a body on the Security Council. Moving on to Mr. Putin, the Russian military is a joke. I've inspected the Russian military on lots of occasions, part of the CFE treaty, and they are a disaster. Okay, Putin is all bluff and bluster, and when you look at the statistics, how many Russians have been killed? Sadly, all those lives taken away, families ruined. The military equipment he has is a joke. This new missile system, it's nothing, really. If Putin can't take on the Ukraine, how could he possibly think he could in any way threaten NATO? The country would be overwhelmed in an instant by the sheer military might of NATO. Putin has lied and lied and lied on every single occasion and on every single treaty that they've ever signed. The CWC Treaty, Chemical Weapons Convention, conventional forces in Europe, they have broken those treaties. Putin thought he was going to do a Hitler version of the Blitzkrieg. His generals had no concept at all about fighting Western military trained Ukrainians. And as we can see, it's a disaster for them. Sadly, it only needs one silly mistake and we could be plunged into a nightmare. I'm just hoping for all our sakes, cool heads prevail. Mr. Trump does worry me, I must confess.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Mr. Chris, let me ask you, does Mr. Trump worry you? And I know that Kenya is one of those countries also that is fighting to have a seat on the Security Council. So does Mr. Trump worry you?
Yes, Mr. Trump's worrying me a whole lot. He's unpredictable. He's focused on himself. He can go unconventional. And all this worries me a lot. Both ways. One, positivity. We have seen that before he even assumes office, he has sent his closest or co-president, Elon Musk, who has gone out and doing a lot of negotiations, doing a lot of changing of stuff. And I am certain that the world order is going to change. Why do I support Mr. Trump? I support Mr. Trump for many reasons. I see that Mr. Trump's presence in the Oval Office is going to make trade globally change. All right? Africa as a whole, we've time and again argued about the terms and conditions that we receive our cash from IMF and from World Bank. Our terms are different compared to the European and the West and East countries who almost get their loans at 0 shillings. And we get, 0%. You get ours around 21 and 31%. Struggling economies will still get that, all right? Donald Trump has projected himself as a deal breaker. We are praying and hoping that he breaks so many deals, and some of these deals could go way ahead in supporting Africa. For example, look at in terms of natural resources. On solar power alone, Africa can contribute 60% of the global need of power from its accessibility to renewable energy. Other lots of resources are here in Africa, but then we only need a shift in terms of how we trade. We are hoping that Trump can change it by him saying making America great again. That great again must not mean that he deprives other country of income or revenue streams from their resources, but he changes that to favor them. Look at what is happening in West Africa. Many of our brothers and sisters have lost their lives there because of interferences. And look at what has happened in Burkina Faso. I am telling you, I have followed the captain, the president of Botswana, very closely. I have seen him do many tremendous things that if it were done in many African countries, the African continent would now play a very big role in terms of the trade dynamics in the global arena, in terms of monetizing African resources for the African people, in terms of us adapting the next gen technology to ensure that, for example, even farming, that is our backbone in nearly all African countries, we are changing how we farm, how we produce agricultural products, and that raw material that we produce of our agricultural products can be used here in Africa as raw material and exported out of Africa as finished goods. But look at the dynamics right now. Our raw materials go out and then they come back as finished products. So we are hoping that with DJT in the office, these trade dynamics and power balance can change here and there. Mr. Roland has mentioned something that icks me a lot. South Africa and the way they are behaving. We know very well South Africa has been financed by Iran to take Israel to the International Court of Justice. We know that for fact. That is not the way we want to go. We do not want that African policies are influenced by people to drive their own agenda, or countries to drive their own agenda of hatred, of anti-Semitism or something like that. No. We want a globe, we want a world where we have a leader that can pose a balance that ensures each and every person in the territorial domains, they have the right to behave the way they have the right to live peacefully, and they have the right to trade and revenue that can go back in developing those countries for them to be able to attain the same level that other countries have attained because of the exploitation or monetization of the natural resources and the technology and the strength of their population. We want that in Africa. And that can only happen when you have a leader that has a different kind of way that he looks at trade. We are hoping. The other day he mentioned that he's appointed, is God chosen. We are hoping that he's God chosen because we want that change. He has mentioned very well that if any man is seen kissing another man in the US, he's subject to the law. And this is what has been fed to African population. Even our own children are starting to consume this kind of things. We're looking forward to someone who will change that dynamics to ensure that we live by moral standards that govern us the way God designed this world at the Garden of Eden. Heterosexualism, not homosexualism, heterosexualism. So we hope that this is the man to make all these changes that can make a difference across the globe, particularly in the African continent.
Thank you so much. Both of you have, I thought the energy in the room just flew up when we talked about Israel and Russia, and it's quite interesting because we're going to have this conversation maybe next time, because when you're saying you're going after Israel and you're blaming America for vetoing the weddings of the Security Council, but you guys are not saying release. Why is the Security Council not saying release the hostages? And if you release the hostages and Israel drop another bomb, then we could actually go after them and say, we've got the hostages back. Why are you dropping the bomb? You understand? We could actually go after them. We know that as those food trucks are crossing over the border into Gaza, the guards, the militants are waiting to take those goods. And no Middle East countries, none of the Middle East countries are interested. They know what is happening on ground. They know that the Hamas have really need to be removed in order for there to be peace in the Middle East. And Hezbollah also the same. So we're going to have that conversation, and we're going to have it right here on TRAZ. And for you that are watching us, please visit our website, send us emails. We're ready to work with your company. You can see the quality of the people that I work with every day. We talk every day, discuss, and looking at how to create more solutions, to make Africa a better place. So please work with us, and we're more than happy to work with you. My name is Temil Tokpaolodo, all the way from the United Kingdom, cold and windy United Kingdom. I say bye now. Mr. Chris?
Bye for now. Thank you. Join us. We have a lot in store for you to just make you better and for us to better this world. TRAZ is your one-stop shop for security, safety, risk, and global solutions. Welcome to TRAZ.
Thank you. Mr. Roland?
I just want to make sure that Chris has got a bedroom for me in case things go topsy-turvy. I'll keep a place for you as well, Temi, and I'll send Chris my wish list on things I'd like to eat.
We appreciate. I appreciate you, Roland. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, our viewers. Thank you. That's bye from us this Saturday. Thank you for making this your home every weekend. God bless you all. Thank you.
God bless you too. God bless you.